He was just reading by the pool at his own home. But that didn't stop two cops from showing up, demanding answers. They thought he didn't belong there, until he dropped the truth that left them speechless and humiliated before diving into the story. Comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. It was supposed to be a quiet Sunday morning, the kind where time slows down just enough for peace to sink in. The sun filtered softly through the trees, birds chirped in harmony, and the water in the backyard pool glistened like glass. Jordan Blake, a 38-year-old black man and longtime resident of the neighborhood, sat shirtless on a lounge chair, feet propped up, book in hand. It was his one day off from a demanding job. He wasn't looking for anything but calm. Then came the sound of the gate creaking open. Jordan glanced up, expecting maybe a delivery person or the gardener. Instead, two uniformed police officers strode in through the side gate, uninvited, unannounced. Their hands hovered near their belts, eyes alert. Behind them, just outside the fence, stood a familiar neighbor, Miss Cassidy, arms folded tightly across her chest, her smartphone still clutched like a weapon of truth. "Sir," said the taller cop, with a voice full of authority, "you don't belong here. Step away from the pool." Jordan sat upright, blinking in confusion. "Excuse me." The officer didn't flinch. "We got a call about a suspicious individual trespassing on private property." Jordan raised an eyebrow, calmly setting his book aside. "Suspicious individual? You mean me?" The second officer, younger but no less tense, nodded. "You match the description we were given." Jordan let out a short, incredulous laugh. "Yeah? What description is that? Black guy near a pool." The taller cop shifted uncomfortably. "We're just doing our job, sir." "Do you live here?" Jordan tilted his head. "You walked into my backyard without a warrant or permission, and now you're asking if I live here." Miss Cassidy piped up from behind the fence. "He's never here on weekends. I thought maybe he broke in." I didn't recognize him. Jordan stood now, slowly and deliberately, giving them a clear view, not in defiance, but in disbelief. "I've lived here for 7 years. I wave to you every Tuesday, Miss Cassidy, when you water your roses." Her eyes flickered with a mix of embarrassment and defiance. "Well, you just looked out of place today." Jordan didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The irony was louder than any shout. The younger officer took a cautious step forward. "Can you prove you live here?" "Gladly," Jordan replied, turning toward the sliding door. "My ID, utility bill, and a framed photo of me at the housewarming party 5 years ago are all inside. Want me to grab them?" The officers exchanged a quick glance. The tension began to crack under the weight of growing realization. Before Jordan could take another step, a voice called out from inside the house. "Hey babe, everything okay?" A woman appeared, white, mid-30s, holding a mug of coffee. "Why are there cops in our yard?" Jordan gave a dry smile. "Apparently, I'm trespassing in my own home." The woman blinked, then looked to the officers. "This is our house." His house. The truth landed like a rock in water, rippling through the silence that followed. The officers' postures softened, awkward apologies stammered. "Sorry for the misunderstanding, sir. Just responding to a call." "You understand." Jordan folded his arms. "No, I don't understand. You walked into my home without cause, based on a neighbor's assumption. No questions, just suspicion. How many more times does this need to happen before it's not a misunderstanding?" Neither officer had a good answer. They offered more hollow apologies before retreating back through the gate. Miss Cassidy didn't say another word. She disappeared behind her own fence, face flushed, phone still clutched in guilt, back in his chair. Jordan picked up his book again, the pages now tainted with the bitter taste of what had just unfolded. His wife sat beside him, holding his hand. "This is why we keep speaking up," he said quietly. "Because peace shouldn't come with conditions." That quiet Sunday morning had changed. But Jordan's resolve hadn't. The morning was meant to be peaceful. Jordan Blake had carved out this day, a rare Sunday free from meetings, calls, and obligations, just to breathe. The sun was warm, the air still, and the pool shimmered like a mirror. He was barefoot, shirtless, and reading on a lounge chair in his own backyard, completely unaware that his moment of rest was about to be interrupted. The creak of the gate was the first warning point. Two police officers strode in without knocking or calling out. Behind them, at the fence, stood Jordan's neighbor, arms folded, eyes sharp, phone still glowing from the 911 call she had just made. Jordan sat up and looked at them. "Can I help you?" One officer, tall and broad, stepped forward. "We got a report about a suspicious man trespassing on this property." Jordan tilted his head. "A suspicious man? You fit the description," the other officer chimed in. "We need to see some ID." "ID?" Jordan asked calmly. "You're asking me to prove that I'm in my own backyard?" The taller cop didn't blink. "Sir, we're going to need to verify that you live here." Jordan nodded slowly. "Sure. My name is Jordan Blake. I live here. I own the house. You can check the title. It's under my name." The officers didn't move. Their posture didn't change. Their tone stayed firm, as if his words weren't enough. "Any ID to prove that?" One of them asked, still with his hand resting dangerously close to his belt. Jordan gestured to the sliding glass door behind him. "My wallet is right inside. I can get it if you want to wait here." But waiting wasn't in their plan. Without asking, one of the officers took a step forward, his body language shifting, tense, ready. His hand twitched near his cuffs. Jordan saw it, and that's when he stood, not aggressively, not suddenly, just slowly, with the same deliberate calm that had carried him through dozens of high-stakes meetings and tense negotiations in his line of work. But this moment wasn't about business. It was about dignity. He stood, squared his shoulders, and met the officer's eyes. Then, without raising his voice or making a single threat, Jordan said clearly, "You're 2 seconds away from making the biggest mistake of your week." Silence followed. Thick, heavy silence. The officer froze. Jordan continued, voice steady as ever. "You're about to put your hands on the owner of this property. On a man who's broken no law. On someone who has every right to be exactly where he is." The officer hesitated now, eyes narrowing slightly. "And who exactly are you?" Jordan gave a slow smile, not of amusement, but of knowing. "I'm Jordan Blake. I'm a federal civil rights attorney. I've sued cities for less than what's happening right now. I've won cases against departments bigger than yours. And I know exactly what the Fourth Amendment says about unlawful entry and detainment." You could feel the shift, that invisible air of control the officers walked in with. It vanished. Suddenly, the confidence in their posture wavered. The younger one glanced at his partner, unsure whether to proceed or retreat. Jordan stepped back, giving them space, not out of fear, but to offer them a moment of choice. "I gave you a chance to wait, to listen, but instead, you assumed. You escalated. All because I fit the description? If that description was black man near a pool, then maybe you should ask why that even raises alarms in the first place." Just then, the patio door slid open behind him. His wife stepped out, holding his wallet. Her expression was part confusion, part fury. "What's going on?" she asked. "Why are the police here?" Jordan took the wallet and held it up. "Apparently, they needed proof I belonged in my own house." She looked at the officers like they were made of glass, transparent and fragile. "I called your station last month," she said coldly, "when someone broke into a car on this street. No one showed up." That landed harder than she intended. The officers, now visibly uncomfortable, mumbled something about protocol, about responding to calls, about just doing their job. Jordan didn't say another word. He opened his wallet, took out his ID, and held it up. His name, address, everything matched. "You have what you need," he said. "Now go explain to my neighbor why you embarrassed yourselves." Without another word, the officers turned and left. The gate clicked behind them. The neighbor was gone. Jordan sat back down on his chair, hands steady, but heart heavy. Not because he feared what happened, but because of how common it still was. He picked up his book again. But the silence had changed. It was no longer peaceful. It was a reminder, a warning, a lesson, and a promise that the next time, the world would hear about it louder. Jordan Blake walked inside his house, calm and deliberate. He wasn't storming off in anger. He wasn't raising his voice. But every step he took carried the weight of a man who knew exactly what his rights were, and what the law said about people who tried to trample them. Moments earlier, 2 police officers had entered his private backyard without a warrant, responding to a suspicious person report. That person, Jordan, a 38-year-old black man enjoying a quiet Sunday morning by his pool, book in hand. The real suspicion? That he didn't fit the image his neighbor thought she'd see in this upscale, predominantly white neighborhood. Now, Jordan returned to the patio. In one hand, He held his driver's license. In the other, a folder containing his property deed. But what really turned heads was what he held between his fingers, a slim, metallic badge from the State Bar Association. He placed all three items on the patio table like playing cards in a winning hand. "Here's my ID," he said, his voice clear and steady. "Here's proof I own this property." He held up the badge last, letting it catch the light. "And here's what gives me the power to sue both of you, your department, and your entire city, if you don't start explaining yourselves real fast." The words hung in the air like a thundercloud. The taller officer, the one who had earlier hovered near his cuffs, suddenly looked like he'd stepped on a landmine. He shifted uncomfortably. His partner avoided eye contact. "We were just responding to a call," the younger one mumbled, his earlier bravado gone. "We didn't know." Jordan didn't let him finish. "Didn't know what?" he said now, standing straight, holding their gaze. "Didn't know the black guy reading a book next to a pool might own the house. Didn't know that barging into someone's backyard without a warrant is a violation of the Fourth Amendment? Or did you just not care because, hey, it's just another suspicious person call?" The officers didn't answer, but everyone heard the silence. Even the neighbor who made the call, still standing at her fence, pretending to look at her phone as if that might make her invisible. Jordan turned toward her. He didn't shout. He didn't insult her. That he simply said, "Let me guess. You saw a black man at a nice house and assumed I didn't belong." The woman flinched, as if hit by the weight of her own assumption. She didn't speak. She didn't deny it. She just turned around and quietly backed away into her house, her face red, her phone still in her hand. Jordan looked back to the officers. "I've represented people falsely arrested in their own driveways. I've gone up against departments who thought fitting the description was enough to justify anything. And let me tell you right now, I document everything." He gestured toward the security camera mounted under the patio awning. Its red light blinked steadily. "You're both on video. Unlawful entry. Attempted detainment without cause. Racial profiling. So go ahead. File your report. I will too, with your supervisors, with the city, and with the state bar if I need to." The officers stood stiff now. They were no longer in charge, and they knew it. The taller one tried again. "Sir, we're not trying to cause problems here, but you already did," Jordan replied sharply. "And I want your names and badge numbers before you leave." The officers hesitated for a second. Then, slowly, they complied. Jordan jotted the information down on a notepad from the patio table. He didn't say thank you. He didn't have to as the officers turned and left through the same gate they'd entered without permission. Jordan sat back down in his chair. He picked up his book again. Though his eyes didn't return to the pages right away, his wife stepped outside, coffee in hand, having heard the end of the confrontation. "You okay?" she asked quietly. Jordan nodded. "I'm fine. Just tired of proving I belong." She sat beside him and placed her hand on his thigh. He looked out at the pool. The water still and silent, a perfect reflection of the world that too often didn't see him clearly. But today, they saw. And they'd remember, because Jordan Blake wasn't just a homeowner. He was a civil rights attorney. And today, the law wasn't just in his head, it was standing in his backyard. The tension in the air was thick, the kind that makes time feel heavier. Two police officers stood stiff in the backyard of a suburban home, their earlier confidence draining by the second. Minutes ago, they had marched through the gate with authority, responding to a suspicious person call from a neighbor. This suspicious person? Jordan Blake, a 38-year-old black man, homeowner, and civil rights attorney that he had calmly provided proof of identity, a property deed, and a badge from the State Bar Association. And now, as the reality of the situation settled in, the officers began to backpedal. "We didn't mean any disrespect," one started, his voice softer now, almost apologetic. Jordan didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "But you did disrespect me," he said, his tone sharp and unwavering. "You walked onto my property without a warrant, treated me like a criminal. You approached with your hands on your belts like I was a threat. And let's be honest, the only thing that made me suspicious to you was my skin." Neither officer could meet his eyes. They muttered apologies, tried to explain they were just doing their job, and offered to leave things be. But Jordan wasn't interested in hollow apologies. "Oh, you'll file a report," he said, stepping forward with intention. "And so will I." He pulled out his phone, not with anger, but with purpose, and began snapping photos of the officers, their badges, the patrol car parked just beyond the side gate, and finally, the neighbor peeking from behind her blinds across the yard. This isn't about bruised egos, he continued. This is about accountability. I've spent my entire career defending people in moments just like this. People who didn't have a badge, or a deed, or a law degree to protect them. He looked directly at the taller officer, who had earlier come within seconds of detaining him. Today, you didn't just pick the wrong house, Jordan said. You picked the wrong man. The silence that followed wasn't the same as before. It wasn't tense. It was sobering. The younger officer opened his mouth as if to speak, then thought better of it. The taller one gave a slow, reluctant nod, then turned toward the gate. Without another word, they left, their steps slower, their heads lower. The moment they disappeared through the gate, Jordan let out a quiet breath. Not relief, not quite. It was more like a mental reset. A reminder that staying calm under pressure doesn't mean the pressure isn't there. His wife joined him a moment later, phone in hand. I got it all on video, she said quietly. He gave her a faint smile. So did the security cam. She placed a hand on his shoulder. I hate that you even have to go through this. I know, he replied. But I'm glad I was the one here today. Because someone else might not have known their rights. Might have gotten cuffed. Or worse. He picked up the folder with the property deed, then glanced at the state bar badge still resting on the table. People think this badge protects me, he said. But it doesn't. Not really. It just gives me the power to fight back. To make noise. To shine a light when people in power get it wrong. Across the yard, the neighbor's curtains closed fully, as if that could erase the scene she had triggered. Jordan shook his head. We pay taxes, follow the law, raise families, and still, we're seen as intruders in our own spaces. His wife sat beside him. So what now? Now, he said, I document everything. File my own report. Send copies to the police chief and the oversight board. And I make sure the next time they respond to a suspicious person call, they remember what happened here. He looked out at the pool, calm again, just like the morning had started. But it wasn't the same. Jordan Blake didn't seek this confrontation. He didn't want it. But he knew that when it came, he couldn't afford to ignore it, because in America, sometimes dignity isn't just lived, it has to be defended, and today he defended it well. Jordan Blake didn't rush to post the footage online. He had the perfect opportunity. The video was sharp. The audio was clear. It showed everything. The moment police entered his backyard without a warrant, the confrontation, the way he calmly stood his ground, the way they backed down when they realized who he was. But Jordan wasn't interested in going viral for the sake of it. He had something bigger in mind. Instead of uploading the video to social media, Jordan took a more strategic route. First, he submitted a formal complaint to the local police department. He listed every violation: unlawful entry, racial profiling, attempted detainment without cause. He also filed a harassment report against the neighbor who made the false call, a woman who had lived across the street for years and who now pretended she'd never seen him before. Then he did something else, something few victims of these encounters get the chance to do. He shared his story face-to-face with the community. At the next town hall meeting, Jordan stood before a packed room of residents, black, white, Latino, Asian, people who had seen the headlines, but hadn't heard the story straight from him. He wasn't angry in his delivery. He was deliberate, thoughtful, and devastatingly honest. That a local reporter caught a snippet of his speech on video. That clip would change everything. The color of your skin should never decide how much respect you're given. I wasn't trespassing. I was reading a book by my own pool. And yet, I was treated like a criminal, not because of what I did, but because of what I looked like. Within 48 hours, the clip went viral. It wasn't just the eloquence of his words. It was the calm, steady force behind them. Viewers saw not just a man wronged, but a man standing tall in the aftermath, refusing to be silent. Soon, local news picked up the story. Then regional stations. Then national outlets. Under growing pressure, the police department issued a public apology. The chief of police admitted the responding officers had failed to follow proper protocol, and that internal changes were already underway. But Jordan didn't stop there. The neighbor, faced with social backlash and a formal harassment complaint, quietly sold her home and moved out within 2 months. No statement, no apology, But more importantly, the incident sparked real change. Jordan began receiving invitations from schools, community centers, and city boards asking him to speak. People weren't just angry, they were ready to act. They wanted to learn. They wanted tools. They wanted to make sure they didn't become part of the problem. Recognizing the momentum, Jordan partnered with other civil rights attorneys, educators, and advocates to launch a new grassroots initiative. Know your rights. Know your power. The goal was simple: educate, equip, empower. They held free workshops on legal rights during police encounters. They printed cards summarizing what to do and what not to do when stopped, questioned, or confronted. They taught people how to record incidents properly and file effective complaints. And they made sure that young people, especially young Black and brown men and women, knew their power wasn't just in their voices, but in their knowledge. Jordan also helped lead mandatory training sessions for local law enforcement, focusing on implicit bias, de-escalation, and accountability. Some officers resisted at first, others welcomed it. But none could deny the impact of hearing Jordan's story straight from the man it happened to. 1 year later, complaints of racial profiling in the city dropped significantly. Jordan didn't take credit. He didn't want a statue, or a plaque, or a viral legacy. All he wanted was a safer, fairer world. And he knew that change begins when silence ends. When asked in a follow-up interview why he continued to speak out, even after the headlines faded, Jordan answered without hesitation: because next time, it might not be me. It might be someone without a badge, without a camera, without a voice. And I'll be damned if I stay quiet while that happens. And so, he didn't stay quiet. He built something louder, stronger, enduring. A voice not just for himself, but for all those still waiting to be seen, heard, and respected. If this story opened your eyes or touched your heart, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more real, powerful stories that matter. Until next time, stay aware, stay strong, and keep standing for what's right.